Welcome to another Gateway recording. If you're interested in marketing, branding, and communication skills topics, today we're going to be talking about tone of voice, which is a very important topic. But why you might want to subscribe to it when I'm talking like this, I have absolutely no idea. Sam, what are your thoughts about tone of voice?
Tone of voice is really important. I mean, it's the most extraordinary thing to examine, I think. When it's out there in the world, we see tone of voice in every interaction we have with customer services, when we read things, we hear things. It's just the most unbelievably important thing to get right. And I think that in this video today, we've started off by getting it absolutely 100% spot on. Don't you agree, Joe?
So you are saying that just because you're sounding more enthusiastic and energized, my tone of voice is dull and boring and not very interesting to anybody.
That's correct.
I hope we've made the point. Today we are talking about tone of voice, but not in a super enthusiastic way, or in a very monosyllabic way, because we feel it's a really, really important topic. It's absolutely everywhere around us, and I've been very lucky. I've done lots of work with brands about tone of voice. But Sam, you had an interesting experience recently in New York with a business, or not a business, an event you went to recently with your family. Tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it's quite a good recent example, actually. So it was basically this miniature golf, crazy golf experience, and the whole premise was that it's a magical family experience. It's all to do with sort of wizardry and witchcraft, and it's a great offering, I have to say. It's a really good experience. But the thing was, there was obviously a team of people working there who welcome you into the golf to begin with, and then you have this. You go around, you play your round, of course, and you get some freebie little awards at the end. And the whole idea, the premise is really you're going there with a certain demographic of your children and a family group, and it's all about keeping up this idea of this magical experience, and you want that throughout. And it started really well with the way the staff welcomed us and got us into the actual golf itself. But when we finished, the main person who spoke to us and gave us our prizes had lost the tone of voice. The veil had sort of slipped, shall we say. And it was a very much, you could see this person had a very human issue of it was the end of the day. They wanted to knock off their shift and get home. And therefore it was rushed, the interaction was very flat, and it wasn't magical. And this was supposed to be the sort of the payoff of the whole experience, when you leave excited and happy, and also importantly from a commercial standpoint, when you might be persuaded to buy a photograph of your family, sitting with this green screen background. So that's the real point, when the conversion was there for a little bit of extra revenue. Needless to say, we didn't buy that. I don't think we would have anyway necessarily, but we certainly didn't after this very sort of dismissive sort of tone, I would
And,
say.
and how did it make you feel?
I felt that it a bit deflated, because it sort of deflated the experience. The experience itself was really good. We really enjoyed doing the golf, and the kids were quite excited about it. And then it just took the edge off everything. And I think I felt, well, oh, that's a bit of a shame. Bit of a shame, missed opportunity. So I felt a bit deflated, I would say. And you didn't feel warm enthusiasm, excitement that was continued from the investment that the brands put into the rest of the experience.
It links back to that famous Maya Angelou quote, in that people may forget what you did, they may forget what you said, but they generally won't forget how you made them feel. And it all comes back to feelings. And of course, you're talking about spoken tone of voice, but tone of voice also is important in terms of what we read, whether it's on a website, a piece of marketing collateral, what we read in emails that people write to us, but also visual communication and how that works. So it operates on all sorts of different levels. And I think if you're in business, it's really important nowadays to get a handle or an understanding of tone of voice, because it's also part of your brand personality. This is one of the reasons why we thought we'd talk about it today.
Yeah, it's exactly it. And I think what I'm also saying with this story, I suppose, is that consistency. So the fact that it's such a shame where you've achieved the correct, shall we say, tone of voice, at that time, and then you've lost it at a certain point. And I think for me, I mean, I suppose my own definition I would think of in terms of tone of voice. I'd like to ask you what yours is in a minute, but I think for me it's really about, it's the way in which you would expect to interact with this brand if you have a relationship with them at this particular point in time. So I mean, some brands are very large and they do an
Mm.
awful lot of things for lots of different target groups, but for me at that particular time, that interaction I had with the brand, that relationship, I expected to be communicated with in a certain way and to feel a certain way, whether it was written or spoken. But I'm sure you've got a really
Well, no,
nice
I think
trait.
that's right. It's very important because it's also very subjective. But generally, we can say that tone of voice is an expression of the people who work for that particular business or brand. And it's also a reflection of the culture, the values, because if you're reflecting what your cultures and your values are in your business, that should cascade through into the way that everybody speaks. And it's not just about words, it's about rhythm and pace, and you can play around with things. So it's a very complex subject and it operates on many levels. And so sometimes with businesses, you can think about what your values are, and you can say, well, let's say, for example, we're very supportive. Now, supportive is fine, but we could actually be charmingly supportive. And so if we're saying we're charmingly supportive, the way that we speak to people, the way that we write to people, there's got to be a little charm in it. Or we could
Mhm.
say we are as supportive as a cheetah, which kind of implies that we're really speedy. We respond to things very quickly. And all of those things are little indicators to people who work in an organization to the sort of tone of voice you want to communicate. I'll give you another example. I did some work for Nespresso a few years ago, and with the customer service team, and we were trying to define what the values would be and the guidelines for how they wrote on social media. And of course, we went back to some of the George Clooney videos with Jean Dujardin and I think Camille Cotin, the three of them. And of course, implicit in that is a sense of fun. And we realized that one of the values within Espresso is fun. So that gave the advisors permission to have a little bit of fun when they were writing to customers. So they weren't just very formal and serious like I was at the beginning. They were communicative, they were complimentary. All of these things impact on how a brand is seen, as well as your own expectation of it when you get in touch with it, which is again another reason why it's so fascinating.
Oh, exactly. And again, I mean, your point about emotion. What are the emotions that you actually produce in someone in any of these interactions, any of these touch points that someone has with the brand, and also just the words. I mean, we know that writing is another, copywriting is another area, of course, but the word, when you said those two words previously about charmingly and then like a cheetah, it immediately, in terms of how I saw that supportiveness, those images came into my head. I saw like this sort of butler with the charming. I saw someone very well dressed there. So, oh, how can I help you, madam? And with the cheetah, I saw a picture of a cheetah. But then immediately I think speed, and I think right. Well, obviously, and you just said those words to me, those
Yeah.
terms, and I immediately went there in my head. And it just shows the power, but as you say, the complexity of this for a brand, particularly as it grows, as a business grows. How do you instill those values and perpetuate them within an organization and make sure that's always present? Because it has to be to actually function appropriately, I think, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I think that the way we should probably sort of end up this is really about how do you actually go about formulating what your tone of voice is going to be. And that is it's straightforward, but it takes time, and that goes back to your values and what you stand for, what the culture is going to be. And once you've defined what those are, you can say, well, this is how we want to sound in our marketing, this is how we want to sound in our customer service, but also make sure there's a link on them. Another very good example of this is Octopus Energy, which is famous for its tone of voice, its playful tone of voice, with a rather bland subject with electricity and gas. But it's been very successful for it. Again, it goes back to brand identity and brand differentiation.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, really valuable lessons, I think. And I think we should probably wrap it up there with our normal tone of voice that we have
Yes.
in our videos. And hopefully that's been interesting for people. And there's a lot more on this, of course, with Gateway courses, with our next iterations of our courses with people, whether it's online and in person, but also hopefully a lot more valuable content to discover in the coming months as we share it with you
And
on
we have
LinkedIn.
inspired people now to subscribe because it is an interesting tone of voice that we've come across as.
Indeed, I hope we've struck the right balance.